Hello, Dev here. I thought it would be cool to do a video about the new World Cup for Rainbow Six that has been announced by Ubisoft coming next year, and go over all the different teams that are going to be present, all the different nations, my thoughts on what would make some cool teams, and then some awards at the end for who's going to be the fan faves, dark horses, and who's going to win the whole thing. So firstly, what is the World Cup? Well, each nation, there are several invited nations, are going to present a team of mixed players from their normal team. So for example, you can't just have all the 5 NIP players being Team Brazil. And it's not meant to be necessarily as competitive as Six Invitational. It's meant to be more patriotic, more like a World Cup you would see in traditional sports. So I think it's going to be tons of fun, and already people are enjoying it by proposing what teams they think are going to do well. So let's do that. Starting it off, let's go Germany first. I said Aces, Corey, Hungary, Prano, and Draven. In their own right, all really strong individual players, all competing in the EUL in Stage 1. I think that'll be a really strong team. Next is Spain. I said Goga, Polo, and Baroz +2. Now, I didn't really want to go out on a limb and just say players that I haven't necessarily watched their gameplay of very much, but Goga obviously speaks for himself, his time on G2 and Penta, and now moving on to Vitality. A really strong player, quite versatile as well. Polo and Baroz, also long-time players in the Rainbow Six esports scene that actually played in Tokoname, Japan in the Season 10 finals, filling in for NIP, and honestly just completely styled on Reciprocity. It was really hard for the Reciprocity roster to fight, especially Polo, so I think that'd be a good roster. Moving on to the UK, Citizen, Leon, Kendrew, Doki, and I said plus Nathan, even though I haven't watched much of the UKIN, the nationals for the UK and Ireland. But I thought, look, I've seen a little bit of Nathan on Twitter and stuff and seen some clips, so I thought, why not? Plus Shaz for coach, because I would love to see Shaz in more environments. He's just such a good guy. For Italy, I said unknown because I honestly haven't watched enough of the Italian nationals. Now, I took a look at the stats and stuff, but I just don't feel like I could present a valid opinion on that. So go nuts, Italians. Tell me who you think it's going to be. For France, this is a super stacked region. The French community has been super passionate and had some really star players, but there are some obvious ones that we can't ignore. For example, Shaiko. I think you can't have a French team without Shaiko. I'd say the same for Bibu. He has been a pillar of the French Rainbow Six community for such a long time. Now, picking a second BDS player was quite hard because I was tossing up between Brede and Renshiro. Ended up with going with Renshiro just because I think he'd been in the scene for so long and he had such a good performance during the major, so I went with him. And then I decided to grab some Tempra players, so we got Shinka and Voy to round off that 5-stack roster. Moving on to Russia, it's mostly just an amalgamation of Team Empire and Virtus Pro, which I think is what a lot of people are doing with these teams, is taking 2 or 3 teams, mashing them together. So I've got Shepard and Scyther from Empire, Pasha and Rask from Virtus Pro, with Emission jumped in there for good measure. Now he's been dropped from that roster, so I thought, well, since there's the rule of maximum 2, I guess I can still use him. It's the best fraggers overall from Virtus Pro and best overall and support from Empire, so I think it's going to be really strong. For Korea, another invited region, moving on to APAC, I said MV Taylor and Shail from Cloud9, both really strong players. It was a tough decision putting Shail in there. He's a bit newer, but he's just been so good that it's hard to pick anyone else on Cloud9 over him. Also, Tomorrow and Demic I grabbed from Talon and Scars. Both players have been the standouts on their team. And then Hedy I grabbed from, he actually plays in a different team, but I thought, look, he used to play on Cloud9. He actually used to play on Norengo, so it'd be fun to just jump him in there as well. Moving on to Japan. Japan, there are just so many good players in Japan. Honestly, watching Japanese Siege is just absolutely nuts. So it was really hard to choose, but I wanted to go for some OGs and some really strong up-and-coming players. So I went with Shin, who plays for Fav Gaming. He used to be the captain of the old Irons roster, which was the first APAC team to qualify or to go and win the APAC championship and go overseas. So he's great. Also played on Norengo for a stint. Also, well, from Norengo, I've got Meryu, who's been the captain for a long time, ever since Walker left. Also been a standout player from way back in the day. Hasn't been so good recently, but I think he deserved to be there anyway, and I think he can come back to form. Joining him from Norengo, I got Yashingo, just such a consistent player. Also actually played for the old Irons roster as well. If I'm not wrong, potentially the Sengoku Ecstasy roster at 1.2. Really great player, really consistent. Anitsun from Cyclops, probably the best team in Japan right now. Anitsun is just not only a hilarious character and a great player, really creative, does some crazy things with Clash. Just so good, you can't pass him up. And then moving on, I've got Afro from Fav as well. He's just such a good player. Been really doing well for his team this year. It was tough though choosing between him and JJ, but I thought, look, JJ used to play on Norenga. I don't know if there's any feelings there. I thought maybe it'd just be good to give a rookie a shot. XQQ is coach, of course, from Cyclops. Now on to my own country of Australia itself. Now what's cool with Australia is not only do we have Australian teams playing in Oceanic Nationals, we've got Fnatic playing in APAC North, and we even have an Aussie overseas in G2. So I wanted to mix things up a little bit, a bit of an all-star team, and so I've got Magnet from, or Mag as he's called now, from Fnatic, Virtue, which we're gonna snatch back from EU, for this one tournament, and then I want Diesel from Wildcard. He's just such an insane support player. And then we've got Vinny, who's been a rising star, just getting better and better and better over the years. And Dino as well, who plays for Pittsburgh Knights. And the way I see this is it is really hard to choose, but it's 5 really smart players who can basically play any role, and you've got a really great mix of experience too. Like, I don't just want to do all players who have done multiple LAN events before, and I don't just want to do all rookies. I want to do a nice, healthy mix, and I think this would be a really strong team. Moving on to Chinese Taipei, I gotta say I don't know who to pick from this one. You've got a couple teams coming from that region like Electrify, but I don't feel qualified to comment, so go nuts, tell me if you think you have a cool team from them. Moving on to North America, USA, another really hard one because they've had like Rainbow Six for so long. They've had a professional scene that's been developing over time, but I wanted to grab some of the greats and also some of the up-and-coming players. So Hot and Cold, just doing so well for Dark Zero. Jump him in there as a captain. Bolo. When does Bolo play? At the World Cup, obviously. Rampy and Bosco from SSG, you know, world champions, enough said. Hyper, now I don't know about Hyper, whether he counts as US or whether he has citizenship, because I know he's Greek, so I put in Laxing as a backup, because Laxing is nuts as well. Moving on to Team Canada, Canadian. Enough said, he is a Rainbow Six Siege icon, multi-time world champion, and his name is literally, his alias is literally Canadian, so gotta have him on the roster. I also chucked Fox A on there, or Fox, oh my god, I always get roasted for saying that wrong. Jarvis as well, a bit of an OG, and Pojo Man, I thought it'd be cool to see him back in action. For the 5th, now I don't know the Canadian like nationals well enough, or the Canadian portion of the NAL, but I guess a player probably from Mirage would do best there. Now, moving on to Brazil. This is a huge one, and there are so many good players, but I had to go with Muzi, Palu, Pino, Nesk, and Yuna. You got to have a support in there, along with all the fraggers, so very hard to choose, but I think that's 5 of probably the 20 best players in the entire world on that roster right there. Mexico gets an invite as well. Admittedly, I don't know any Mexican players other than Geometric. I mean, you can look it up. There is like a Mexican tournament as well, but I don't want to go into teams or players that I don't know too much about. So you guys let me know what you reckon about that one to join Geo from TSM. And through the qualifiers now, EU gets 2 spots in the qualifiers, so I thought Team Finland would probably make it through, and basically just a reunited old ENCE or Sisu roster. So I'd go Kanto, Uno, Shate, and then 2 retired players. I would bring in Junis and Boonsi. Honorable mention to Wilkie as well. I know he was the captain of that team for a long time. I just have so many good memories of Junis and Boonsi in particular, like as players, but I would love to see Wilkie maybe there as a manager or something. And then keeping in the Scandinavian region, I reckon the other team that's going to qualify is probably Team Sweden. Now, I've heard some good things about like Poland and maybe the Benelux, but I'm going to go with Sweden because that means we get Fabian, and he's also a Siege icon, so you kind of need him there. And I would grab some of the Chaos players, former and present, Vito, Renewals, Red Groove, and then plus someone else. I don't quite know who that last one would be. Through the qualifiers in Latin America, I really don't know. So you guys let me know who thinks going to make it through that qualifier, what country is going to make it. Through the APAC North qualifiers, I've got to say it's probably going to be Thailand. I know that the Southeast Asians are really good. Like you've got Singapore as well, but most of the Singaporean players are just on Giants, so I don't know how strong that team would be if they had to just have maximum 2 from that roster. So I'm going to go with Thailand because you've got Confirm and Xavier and a really strong Thai scene. So Red Sun, Lycol is DCH, Healthcare, OG, and Funlex. I think that would be a really strong team. Funlex, because now he doesn't play for them anymore. I can fit him onto the roster as like a 3rd player from that team. APAC South, India, probably just take the best players from Mercenaries and Union. I really don't know exactly who that would be, but you guys figure that out. MENA from Middle East and North Africa. I don't know which players. I haven't been following that region very well, but I'm really glad they get a spot, or at least a qualifier. And yeah, I don't know. You let me know who the highlight players are from that region. All right, on to my awards. So I've got 3 awards. Firstly, the fan favorites, and I've got a runners-up and a main pick for this one. So this is meant to be the favorites, not just from their own country. So you've got countries like France and Brazil and Japan that have like huge fan bases. I don't just mean like the fans from that country. I mean the teams that are going to have fans not just from their own country. So I went as runners-up, I did Team USA, mainly because of Bolo, and obviously USA/Canada won the Six Invitational. They've been around for ages, they're very vocal, so I think there's going to be a lot of fans there, plus Bolo. But I didn't give them the #1 spot because I just can't go past Brazil. I think Team Brazil is not only, one of the best teams, but one of the most popular teams, even to people who aren't from that region. Just watching the passion from the Brazilians is just absolutely infectious. So they're my fan favorites. The dark horse, now you might say a bit of bias is coming here. I think APAC's always going to be underrated, so I've got to have a couple of teams in there, but maybe something in here will surprise you. I've got #3, so my runner-up for the dark horse is Team Australia, my own. I think that they're definitely going to be underrated, especially if there aren't many Fnatic players on that roster. People just wouldn't even think of them, and I think they can definitely make a splash. But my runners-up for the dark horse is Team Spain. Goga, Polo, and Barroz are insane players. Now, I don't know who the last 2 would be to roll out that roster, but the Spanish Nationals is a really, really strong program, so there's so much talent coming through there. Spain would definitely be underrated. And then my #1 dark horse has got to be Thailand. Call me APAC biased, but the Thai siege is just insane. And anyone trying to play against Thai players, like if, let's say you've been scrimming in EU or NA forever, and you come up against a Thai team, you don't know how to deal with them. They're just so in your face, they're so abrasive, and those Thailand players are just stars. So I definitely think they're going to be super underrated. You've got to be really careful if you're going against them. Don't underestimate them. Awards, to win it all. Really, really tough call here. I know I'm going to upset people, but that's just the case. I can't guess everything, and I decided not to have any tied awards. I always had an order. So my runner-up, so 3rd place, I said Team USA. Now, I know a lot of people would put these guys higher. I think they are a really strong team. But, who knows? I decided to go for teams maybe with that more chaotic playstyle because this isn't necessarily going to be a league or a tournament where teams are going to scrim as much, because any time that they scrim with this team, it's taking away from their own team. So, like Rampy and Bosco, they don't want to take time away from Space Station while they're playing in this. So I think that teams that are a bit more chaotic will benefit from that playstyle that's going to ensue at the World Cup. So I put USA as 3rd, mainly because of that region. I still think that incredibly talented, and NA is still one of the strongest regions in the world. #2, and I know I'm going to upset a lot of people saying this is only #2, France. Honestly, like Shaiko and like all those guys on the same roster, Bibu, like that's just going to be so strong. I definitely think that'll be a really, really strong team. But #1 had to go to Brazil because there's nothing you can do when you're just getting swung by the Brazilians. They're insane. And so I had to give them the to win it all. Brazil. Who knows how it'll go. I had a couple of other favorite teams to chuck in there as well, not for like necessarily to win it all, but just notable, honorable mentions. Germany, a lot of experience, and people like Corey, Aces, so got to chuck them in there. Japan, super stacked. I think that'll be a really fun team to watch. A lot of experience there, a lot of talent. Russia is basically just a combination of 2 different EUL teams, Virtus Pro and Empire, so they're going to be really good, a lot of experience. And Canada, because it's got Canadian on it. And of course, like other NA veterans like Fox and Jarvis and Pojo as well. So I think there's going to be basically any team is going to be fun to watch. Every team's going to have such a good story, and that's one of the things I think is not necessarily lacking, but we're going to see it developed so much more strongly in this World Cup than we have in the past. Is all of that experience and all of that story, like that, it just creates such a narrative that I'm really excited for. So let me know below in the comments your favorite roster ideas and who you want to see represented at the World Cup, plus who you think is going to win the whole thing. Please don't fight. Please don't hate on me. Please don't fight each other. Just tell me who you think is going to win it all. Anyway, cheers for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll have more stuff coming your way sometime soon.